Nintendo has been making copyright claims, which is typical Nintendo. That's what they do. This time they're going after Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers hackers. Nikki Hill, you have a Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch?
Affirmative.
You have not.
We have one too, don't we?
I have one, yes, I believe. Do you have one?
Yeah, I got a wonderful Christmas gift from Nick Mound.
Have you?
That contained a Game & Watch.
Have you been hacking it?
I don't know what that means.
Well,
and
then
if
you're
I
safe.
did, I probably wouldn't.
You're safe then. There's somebody who has been making videos on YouTube showing how they've hacked the Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers to add in different games. They've been adding in other Nintendo other Nintendo ROMs and playing them on the Super Mario Brothers Game & Watch, and obviously Nintendo is not happy about that. So they did a copyright strike or a copyright claim to take down 2 of this guy's videos because they don't want fans taking ROMs and putting them on the Game & Watch Super Mario Brothers. Now, if you own the hardware and you want to hack it and put other software on there, sure, why not? That's fine. But if you are putting other ROMs on there from other game companies, obviously you did not get permission from those game companies to do that. And the ROMs that were being showcased in these videos included things like The Legend of Zelda. And obviously Nintendo did not give permission for that. If you're hacking this thing and you're showing how to put on like homebrew games, that'd be one thing. I still think Nintendo might take issue with that because Nintendo is more against emulation and things like that. But at least it wouldn't be because of people taking Nintendo's ROMs. It would just be the hacking and emulation part of it. So there's more of an argument there for the fans rather than Nintendo. But if you're putting games like Legend of Zelda on it and you're showing people on YouTube how to do it, then Nintendo, I would argue Nintendo's more on the right side of things for themselves. It's for their company and their intellectual IP. Intellectual.
They're very smart.
They have to go after that stuff. So yeah, when it comes to ROMs and emulation, and it as far as like freeware games or indie games that are developed by anybody, that's one thing. But when you're taking ROMs of companies like Nintendo, or it could be anybody else, Sega or Square Enix or whatever, and putting them on there and showcasing how to do it, then obviously those companies are going to take a little bit of an issue with that. So the guy who made the videos is trying to get the copyright claims removed and get the videos put back, but as far as we know, that has not happened yet. The Pandalorian says, sometimes Nintendo should remind themselves of the Streisand effect before taking action. That is another good point. Nintendo could let these videos go and maybe it won't drum up as much attention as they're worried that it will, but when they go after these videos and remove them, that becomes a bigger story in and of itself, and then more people try to see the thing that was removed, and then more people learn about things that Nintendo doesn't want them doing. So there's arguments all over to be made, but
that's the Streisand effect?
Yeah, why? That's what I want to know. Why is it called that?
I know this, and I need to think it out. Okay.
So, you know what? I think I remember the meaning. So at some point, Streisand had this rule that the paparazzi or basically the press couldn't take pictures of her house or something, and because she she basically dared all these people to do it. So more. Long story short, more people ended up taking pictures of her house than they would have had she not done anything at all in the first place.
Yeah, it was like Jennifer Lopez, or no, was it Jennifer Lopez? Who the hell was it? It was not that long ago. It was Beyonce. Beyonce. There was a picture of Beyonce that was extremely unflattering of Beyonce, and she went on a tirade to try and get it removed from the internet, which made it a thing, which made sure it was never removed from the internet. People
notice me, senpai. Notice
people
me.
Still to this day are like, "Hey, here's that picture that Beyonce wanted nobody to see," and they put it up, and it makes it to the front page of Reddit.
There it is.
So, oh, is it in the chat?
This story reminds me.
There it is. That's the picture. Sorry, Grimbles, go ahead.
I was just say this story reminds me of the Metallica versus Napster thing.
Yes.
It's like Nintendo Like, do you really need to squeeze a few more bucks out of the Legend of Zelda?
Well, see, that's the
game.
That's the thing. Nintendo is still making money on that game. Nintendo's one of the few companies that still puts out all their classic stuff. So, I can see why they want to speak up about it, but I also think they overstep a bit too much. I don't think they need to go as strongly as they do. But then again, Grimbles, just this week, I was talking to Vitamin G because Vitamin G asked me about the name of a system, and I'm not going to say the name of it. And he's like, "Is this thing any good?" And I was like, "Oh, that's one of those bootleg systems," and it was filled with like NES, Super Nintendo, Genesis, Game Boy, TurboGrafx, all those ROMs. And I was like, "Oh, that's a bootleg system like that. None of the company's games that are on there have been approved by those companies." And he didn't know that. So there's people out there who are buying this stuff and they have no idea that it's not legal, and the company that's doing it just makes as much money as they can until they get shut down and then they disappear. So
I saw an ad for a system like that on Facebook or something, and and they were like listing off all the games, and they had a game. It was Donkey Kong Country, but they called it Monkey Kong.
Completely different.
Yeah, like they couldn't like. First of all, they were. I guess they were trying to call it Monkey Kong, but they couldn't even spell it right.
So Grimbles, like right now, Nintendo has the NES and the Switch Online, or the NES and Super Nintendo Switch Online collections, which have Legend of Zelda and Donkey Kong and all those, but with save states and online play added and all that. So Nintendo still is making money off those, but they also don't want how do you say this? Unpure versions of their games put out there, because anything that's emulated, even if it's minor, will not be running as it originally ran on the hardware. So I totally get what you're saying. I think Nintendo goes too overboard with it. But they are still actively doing things with those classic games. So I see both sides. Grimbles, just tell us you're stealing games. Just come out with it.
I admit nothing. I see both sides too. I bought a lot of these games on the Wii. Like a lot of like $5 here for an NES game, or $8 here for an SNES game, and those are gone. If I don't have my Wii, I can't play those again. And I wish there was a way that Nintendo would know that, like, look, I bought these already. Let me play these. And, like, yeah, you're talking about the Switch things that they've got, like with the NES and the SNES, but it's the games they want you to play, Like, it should be a whole list of games, and it should be like, oh, Do Michaels, we saw that on the Wii. You bought Urban Champion. You can play Urban Champion. I don't know why you'd want to, but you can. So, like, I don't know. There's something that really irks me about it moving forward. I'm not saying, hey, I'm going to hack my Game and Watch and play whatever I feel like I'm entitled. That I don't think is right. But I wish that they would do something for the fans where it was like, okay, we know a lot of people bought these already. Is there a way we can track it? Is there a way that these people can still play these beloved games? Or do we just keep charging them every 5 years when we drop it again?
Well, see, that's another argument altogether, because how long does Nintendo do that? Like, how many systems do you continue to do that for? Like, are you going to be 50 years down the road still making sure that somebody who bought Wii Virtual Console games can play them on your newest system? Because then
it's only fair.
Well, I'm not saying it's not fair, but I'm saying you're going to hit a point where it's so far back and the return is so small, and the time it takes to make sure that your stuff works with the last 8 legacy systems is going to add in a whole bunch of work that doesn't go towards new games, and a whole bunch of work that is going to add to the development time of the system. Like, backwards compatibility is great, but you can't do backwards compatibility forever. I would love if that were a thing. I would love if they could do that. As a consumer, that would be fantastic. But as a business, you can't go and support your legacy stuff forever. There's got to be a point where you're like, we can't support that anymore.
What if they start doing stuff where, like, you have a game and you can maybe change the icon of it to a QR code that's specific to that download game or something, and now, like, the new system, you can scan it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Or
the more important thing that I want to say is, please, someone at Nintendo, open up a line of communication with Do Michaels. He's got questions. He wants answers from you. He just wants that communication back and forth, it sounds like.
That would be like the biggest mistake they ever made, by the way. They would have to have a whole division for me and my questions and my rantings, and like it just wouldn't be worth it for them.
It's like celery, man. They just walk into this chamber, sit down at a computer, and it's a direct line to you, and that's all they do is answer questions all day long. And then they close the computer and go back, and then they come back, and there's a bunch of messages, like all these extra questions.
I
want
think they're relying on you, RMC, and the gang here to just like be my personal brain doctor and deal with this crap that's coming out of my mouth.
I want to make sure I point this out. People in chat are all talking about Microsoft, because Microsoft has great backwards compatibility. You can take a game that was on the original Xbox and play it on the Xbox Series X or S, which is fantastic. I think that is how it should be, without a doubt. But there's still limitations within that. But Microsoft, by and large, is the company doing the best with that kind of thing. But also, you're talking about, you still have the physical media for those classic platforms too, in some instances. And not everybody has those. People trade in games, or people sell stuff online, or having the ability to do it is great. But also, Microsoft has not been around as long as Nintendo has when it comes to video game content. So you're talking about what? There's the Xbox 360, the Xbox One, and now the Xbox Series S. With Nintendo, it's the NES, the Super Nintendo, the N64, the GameCube, the Wii, the Wii U, the Switch, the Virtual Boy, the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Color, the DS, the DSi, the all, like, it's such a vaster library. It sucks, and I would love for everything to be there, and I would love for everything to be able to be played. But there comes a point where it's not feasible anymore. And I don't want to sound like hail corporate or anything like that, but I think at some point you have to cut things off. Like if Nintendo were to continue their Netflix style services for the NES and the Switch on other platforms, or NES and Super Nintendo on other platforms, I think that'd be great. You just have a library that continues to grow digitally. You pay your whatever, $5 or whatever, and you gain access to all those games and whatever's added afterwards. Then instead of making sure everything is backwards compatible, then Nintendo can just bring that service or those two services over to the new system, and then you have all that stuff there already. So I think there's ways to do it where they could maintain some form of backwards compatibility going forward into the future. But with the way how older systems were to where we are now, there's just some stuff that isn't feasible. When you talk about Microsoft, they have only released platforms that use discs. That's all that they've ever had. Nintendo has had proprietary media on a number of different systems. That technology advanced multiple ways across the years. So if we're going to see great backwards compatibility and great access to classic games, now is the time to do that. Now is the time to come up with a service where that will be feasible for the next 5 generations, the next 10 generations, the next however many it is. I certainly think they could do something like that. But then on the other hand, who the hell knows where we're going to be 25 years down the road when it comes to video games? Who the hell knows if anything we use now is going to be like what we use then? So
we'll just have to wait and see.
We'll just have to wait and see. Hi, Rex. Thanks for joining us. So yes, I love backwards compatibility. I always prefer to play a game on its original hardware where it was meant to be played, but I like having the option to play it on somewhere new. I think Microsoft does a fantastic job, but any company, Microsoft, Nintendo, or Sony, any of the big players, there's just a certain amount of time, effort, work, money, value where you can't dedicate so much of it to making sure that all that old stuff still works. You can have it for a while, but technology changes and player habits change and how we get games change. So it's something that can be maintained for a while, but there's going to be a point in technology or time where things have to change because people, look at Netflix. Netflix doesn't even do disc rentals anymore. And at the time, Netflix disc rentals, that was a big deal.
We had a Netflix disc rental at our house.
And then people
pretty recently
were like,
that we just found.
Return, right? They still have rentals.
Netflix still has disc rentals?
I'm pretty sure.
Maybe they do. I don't know.
Mama says I think you can still do disc.
We still do have a disc
somewhere.
You have to actually log in on a computer. But yeah.
So the disc distribution service for Netflix has certainly changed from what it was, and I'm sure there's people who are like, it's not as easy to get discs anymore, and I got to pay more. I think you also have to pay more if you want the discs because it's such a niche
You're paying
thing
for shipping
Yeah.
too, right? Like that.
I think you have to have a higher tier to get it. So things change with technology, not always for the better, and they don't always make access easier. But that's how technology works. Things are going to change. So, I mean, we have systems now that are digital distribution only. If you get a PlayStation 5, whatever, you can get the one that's only digital, and the same for the Xbox Series S. You go, or is that only? Yeah, that's only digital, right? Digital only platform. So that's locking out a whole option of physical media that you can't use on those systems. So it happens. It's hard. It's tough. It's something for all companies to think about and figure out what to do going forward. I just, as much as I would like to be like, yeah, everything I have and everything I bought should be accessed on every platform, to a degree, I agree with that. But I also see that that's just not feasible at some point. You have to, you can't get to a point where you're holding back your new technology because of the old technology. It's just you don't want to have things artificially shut out before their time. So, it's like somebody saying they have an original iPhone now. Like at this point, supporting an original iPhone, I think would be craziness. But like if you have an iPhone 6 or 7 right now and your phone's running crappy, you're like, come on, I didn't buy this all that long ago and I'm screwed already. So, it's all about the time and how much time passes and how much the technology changes.
I feel like we struck a nerve here.
No, I like talking about it. It's an interesting topic. There's no like right or wrong answer. It's just hard to find a solution that's going to work for everybody. What's your solution, Grimbles?
I think all the money that they could be putting into digitizing the library, coming up with a subscription service, should all be put into taking down YouTube videos on how to do it yourself.
If Nintendo's listening, they're going to be like, this guy knows what he's talking about. Thanks so much for checking out this highlight to the Go Nintendo podcast. If you'd like to subscribe to the podcast, you can check out the description below and subscribe to this channel for more podcast highlights.